Diane Burlap, and today we're visiting with Ken Johnson and Lyle Toots Woods about Merritt's Beach and their experiences as lifeguards at Merritt's Beach and anything else that they can remember about Portsmouth in the early days. So I'll let you guys I know you were both lifeguards out at Merritt's.
Summer of '53.
Summer of '53. Just the one summer?
Yes.
Okay.
Unless he was. I wasn't '53, and then after that I went to the Navy. So.
Okay.
But you were just 1 year, weren't you?
Full time. And then the following year, I worked on weekends and holidays and whatnot. And the other job that I had was pretty much full time working at WKD or Rylanders.
So what are your memories of Merritt's Beach?
A lot of fun. There was hardly any trouble. You know, there was no conflict between Portsmouth and Bellevue or kids from Omaha or nothing. It was just a lot of, and we got to know everybody. You know, I mean, everybody kind of knew everybody, and it was just a fun place to go swim and have a good time and hang out, more or less, you know. So, and in the evenings when it closed, why, Mr. Duty was the manager, and he allowed us to stay over, and we couldn't swim afterwards because they turned the lights out and all that other, and so there was no swimming or anything like that. But we would send up to Caniglia's and get pizzas, or Joe Tess and get fish sandwiches or whatever, and of course they had the music there. We'd dance up by the clubhouse, you know, or the bathhouse, and it was just a bunch of kids, 15, 16, 17 years old, that were just having fun. You know, like I say, there was no wild beer parties or no fights or any of that. I mean, it was just, you know, I mean, we knew the kids from Bellevue as well. They knew us, and of course we got to know some of the kids from Omaha. So in fact, some of the guards from the Omaha pools would come down to Merritt's. You know, there was Peony Park and Hitchcock Park and those, you know, and so we got to know their lifeguards and stuff, you know, and whatever. And so it was just a fun place to be in the summertime, you know. We were talking about, and we both couldn't remember exactly what it was, but we were trying to figure out how much we got paid. And I said, did we get $1 an hour? He said, I don't think we got that much. So I think we got paid by the week. I'm not sure, but I'm pretty sure that probably that's how it was. You know, we probably got $25 a week or something, and that's the way it was, you know. And so you had one night off a week or 1 day off a week, but it couldn't be on a weekend. You know, you had one day during the week, so you get a day off. And
so what were your hours? What time did you have to show up?
well, I think if I remember right now, and Elwood can probably, I think they were from 11 to 11. Now, does that sound right? We opened at 11 in the morning, and at 11 at night, everybody had to get out, you know. But
And how many lifeguards on duty? Two?
Well, he and I mostly were
Together?
the steady guards. Now, when there was a holiday, a weekend, or whatever, they would put on extra guards because of the amount of people. I mean, it's almost impossible for two guys to oversee that many people. You just can't do it, you know.
What were the size of the crowds back then? Did they?
Oh, and I'm going to guess because we had no counters then, you know. But it wasn't unusual for to have 2,000 or 3,000 people down there on a like a 4th of July or some special event, you know. And then we had lifeguard on each raft. We had 2 rafts, we had a lifeguard on each raft. We had one in the boat, we had a little old rowboat, and then there was another guard stand on the west side, and then the main guard stand was right in the middle of the beach. So we probably had, anywhere in probably a couple, I'm gonna say we had 7, 8 lifeguards down there on a real business, and we needed them. I mean, there was no, and luckily, we were talking about that too, the responsibility for kids our age was, we didn't realize it at the time. This is just out to have fun, and meet some girls, but man, everything came out all right, so.
Were most of the lifeguards from here in town, or were they from?
We had some from Lincoln. Of course, the Merritts
Were from
from Lincoln, and some of those guys would come down, but they didn't really come down as lifeguards, but as the crowd got, because you want to be a guard out there on the middle raft or on that raft. And
Do we remember Charlie Elliger?
Who?
Charlie Elliger?
Don't know.
Yes, yes. He actually was one of the foremen working in their Merritt Building Materials facility in Lincoln.
But he also.
But he also would come down and work with the family and do anything that needed to be done, whether it was guarding or whether it was helping to work in the check stand or taking tickets or whatever.
Yeah, I didn't come to Plattsmouth until '59, but then in the '60s, I spent time out there, and I remember Charlie. He was one of those unforgettable characters, I guess. And then I have seen him. I haven't seen him now for several years, but I used to see him once in a while.
I would kind of back up just a little ways from there. The beach became a prominent part of living in Plattsmouth at a real early age. And if you can imagine 6th and 7th grade kids, pre-high school, and there was no bus transportation to get you back and forth. Most families had a car, and post-war, if you had enough for gas, that was another item in there, but you'd see kids with their swimming trunks wrapped up in a towel, and they would hitchhike because the highway came through town, not west of town, but it came through town. And out along about the Masonic home, or in that area there, you'd see 1 or 2 or 3 kids with a bath towel, and the locals all knew that these were kids that were going to go out to the beach. And let's say 6th, 7th, 8th grade kids going to the beach, and if you didn't have enough money to get in, you just tell Emery Duty worked at the gate that you were a little shy that day, and he'd give you a bucket, and you'd pick up pop bottles and cigarette butts for an hour, and then he'd wave at you when it was time to put on your suit and have a good time for the rest of the day. Nobody did not go to the beach because they didn't have any money.
You could work your way in.
You could work your way in.
And how much did it cost to get in? I can't remember. It was by the car or by the person?
It was during the week for kids, I think it was 20 cents, 15 cents. But at that point in time, 15, 20 cents.
Yeah.
Of course, then you went out there every day. Every day. So you became kind of a beach rat in some respects. And most of the kids that grew up through that, the senior lifeguards get tired of going out and rescuing you, so they kind of, as a self-defense item, they taught you how to swim better.
They did give swim lessons out there too.
Well, that was in the morning.
That was in the morning.
The Red Cross had made arrangements for kids to sign up, and I don't even know where they met down here in town. And it's like, you made it, it's like a cattle truck.
Yeah,
Everybody got on the cattle truck, went out, and they had instructors out there, and teach the little kids how to.
And that was part of our job too. We weren't instructors, but we were there
To help with.
to do what was necessary for supervision and whatnot. But yeah, there was a stake bed truck, and they'd pack enough kids in so that you didn't have to worry about them tipping over and getting hurt that way. And of course, there was no restraint items. That was pre-seatbelt law anyway. And if you could imagine the political correctness of transporting the number of kids around town that way, and however, you know, the lessons were free, and they, again, post-war, for a lot of families, a young mother could get kids out of their hair for a few hours. And,
Send them off and have them take
Well,
swimming
it was
lessons.
good training to teach kids how to swim.
Oh,
I mean,
yes, yes.
You know, I don't say anybody should learn how to swim. You know, they had a deal on the news yesterday about this guy that got washed overboard. He floated for 18 hours out in the ocean. I mean, that's unreal. No life jacket or nothing.
but anyway, the beach, starting at a very early age, was the only outlet that you had for recreation in the area. And fortunately, the Merritts weren't that hands-on with the day-to-day during the week type of thing, because this was an ancillary business to their Merritt building materials and Merritt sand and gravel and what have you. So their on-site manager had a lot of discretion, and it paid for itself. But then going into the high school years during the summertime, that was the place. There were two places in town that kids went to get together and be kids. And during the summertime, you went out to the beach, and the rest of the year it was at Wimpy's. And when you think back and look at the inside space that was available
You say at Wimpy's.
at Wimpy's, you know,
Wimpy's was still there when I came to town. In fact, we spent time at Wimpy's when I first came to town.
wasn't big enough to do that. Yeah, but in any event, you had those two areas were what was available. And you know what the funny part of it is? I look back, I have nothing but great memories.
That was enough.
Yeah.
I did not have a deprived childhood whatsoever.
Plattsburgh was kind of a sports-orientated town, really. And I can remember in the wintertime, everybody wanted to play basketball, but, you know, and so we'd go up, and the janitor at the school would let us in, and we'd help him, I guess, you know, them dust mops or whatever, you know.
Right.
We'd be up there mopping the hallway with these dust mops and whatever. Then he'd give us a basketball, and you know, I'm talking 5, 6, maybe 10 guys, and we'd be up there playing basketball in the wintertime inside the gym, you know. And that was, like I say, that was something that kids did. You know, they liked the sports, they liked to be around other kids. Where would you go? Back in that, well, like you say, Wimpy's is about the size of this table. But I mean,
Yeah.
well, I mean, let's face it, it wasn't very big. But back in those days, the cars we drove, most of the heaters in there were non-existent. You know, you would drive and with a scraper, you would scrape the frost off the windows. But gas was like 18 cents a gallon. So I'm telling him today that I worked at Minor Pontiac, which is no longer here, but I bought a 37 Ford, and I went home and I told my dad, I said, I bought a car today, and he goes, and I'm 15 years old, and he went ballistic. What? I said, I bought a car. He said, what'd you buy? I said, I bought a 37 Ford. Where'd you get it? I said, well, I bought it from Herb Miner, and he told me he'd sell it to me for $85, and I could pay him $5 a week out of my paycheck. And that's how I bought my, but that was, like I say, well then I didn't have any money for antifreeze. So when I go home at night, I had to drain they had a petcock on the block, I'd drain the water out and out of the radiator. And then in the morning, of course, you had to close them off and fill them back up. Come out one day and no car. Wait a minute, so it dawned on me my dad took my car. So he come home that night and I said, you took my car? And he said, yeah. He says, the only one was start. It was cold winter today, But he said, I did put some antifreeze stuff in the morning, because he didn't want to get out there and do that in the morning if I had the only car, so it...
Did you take the battery out and put it in the house?
No, never did that. But I do remember draining the block and the radio out of 37 Ford. But Placid was kind of a low-key type town, Nobody, we was talking about that a little bit today too, that nobody thought they were higher than the next guy, We all were pretty much on the same level, and that was even the high school kids and even the kids we ran with, Nobody had a whole bunch of money.
Now, what year did you graduate from high school?
I graduated in 54.
54.
55.
And 55.
And I can remember the year I was a freshman, went out for football. They didn't have enough equipment for all the kids. There was that many kids out for football. And if I remember the figure was right, they said there was 108 kids out for football. Well, that had to be just about every boy that went to school.
Well, yes, I would say,
so
probably.
And there wasn't enough helmets, so whenever somebody would practice and come out, well, then he'd give the helmet to this guy, and then he'd go in back. That's how we practiced, But I mean, everybody wanted to play sports, baseball, basketball, and football was, and of course, they had a track team, And of course, all the girls were on the pep club or in the cheerleading, Wasn't no girls basketball or anything like that.
No girls athletics.
No girls
There was
sports.
no girls sports. But,
Well, we had volleyball when I was in high school.
They did it when I was in high school.
Well, and I went to a real small school, and I think maybe the smaller schools had volleyball where the bigger schools didn't. But that was it.
Also imagine this. During our high school years, there was a major music and band competition that took place at Exarban. And one year, Plattsmouth High School went up and did quite well. And the community took a lot of pride in that. So they really went after sponsoring and raising money and whatnot. So to help support that band and music program. So during the high school years and the football program, the high point of the game was the halftime. So they didn't make kids make a decision, are you going to be in the band or are you going to play football? Many of the kids participated in both. They extended the halftime just a little bit so that the players would have a chance to kind of towel off a little bit. You take off your jersey and your shoulder pads. You still kept your cleats and the bottom part of your uniform on, but you put the top half of your band uniform in the band hat. And they would go out and participate with the band and the halftime show and whatnot, and then get rid of the hat and the horn and the
Then go back to football.
and then you had to have time, of course, to get your shoulder pads back on, your jersey back on, and a minute or two in there to get some kind of instruction from the coach. And you'd go back in, but kids did not have to make a choice between music or football. They accommodated each other. And I think the community benefited from it. So,
What kind of a football team did you have back
the
there?
band was a lot better than the football team was.
I remember senior year, he played with me in senior year. We had 9 games, we were 4-4 and 1. 1-4 lost, 1 tied. There was no, playoff or ties or anything like that. So if you tied, you tied, But we did quite well in basketball. I mean, we were rated high in the state. And and I won't get into that, but through some circumstances, we missed going to the state. We played Tecumseh down in Auburn at the district to qualify for state. And well, like I say, I won't, because there's some hard feelings about, you know, the way the referees treated the Plasman kids on the floor. And but we were, in fact, we beat the #1 team in the state that year, you know, and we were rated as second in the state for quite a few weeks. We were hard to beat. We were hard to beat.
I know you guys have been here and looked at the pictures and was there anything in particular that you saw that brought back memories, I guess?
Other than the old bathhouse, you know, I still, for whatever reason they tore that down, I don't know. But I think with the right amount of fortitude and you know, you talk about a beautiful place to have a water park. I mean, that place would outdraw Omaha, it really would. But nobody wants to put that kind of money in it and time and you know, effort. But yeah, the pictures brought back a lot of memories of how it was, and like I say, it was a fun place. You got to know a lot of people, a lot of kids. When I say people, I'm talking about kids. And once in a while, the school teachers from the high school or grade schools would come out and go swimming, and you know, in the evenings and whatever. And so.
Now you seem to know a little bit about the history. This was a sand pit. From Merritt's had a gravel company in Lincoln, and so they dug the sand pit.
I believe they did.
Yeah,
They were involved with dredging and whatnot, and actually there were probably a half a dozen or so smaller operators that were dealing with sand and gravel, and they were one of them. And then as time went on, Lyman Ritchie seemed to grow a little bit faster. The Merritt company also had other interests in building materials. I believe that they were kind of a pioneer in going into what was called cinder blocks at that time, but now they're just cement building blocks. And they kind of branched off and specialized in that. And then I don't believe the second generation of the family was as interested in maintaining the family's business here. Part of that, the family moved out in the Monterey region of California.
But this was a swimming place in the late 30s. Yeah, I don't know if that was the beginning, but somewhere.
It was after the dredging and whatnot took place. And I believe that this was one of two that they had. Toots knew the other beach that the Merritts owned over.
I believe it was called Capitol Beach, but I'm not.
Oh, in Lincoln.
Capitol Beach in Lincoln is
No, I'm not.
San Diego.
Don't get me. You know, I can't put any money on, but I think that was Merritt's Beach. You know, the Merritt family owned Capitol Beach, but I'm not. I knew they owned one on Lincoln. Now, which one it was, but I heard it was Capitol Beach, but I don't know.
I don't know for sure on that. I know they lived in Lincoln. But I don't. Louis kind of took over this beach in the 60s, I guess. That was when I started going out there, was in the 60s. And
Did he live here in town?
He had an apartment there at the beach.
Oh, he did?
Yeah, in that.
They built an addition onto the bathhouse.
Yeah, in the
I didn't know
bathhouse.
that.
He had an apartment there. And then in the wintertime, I think he lived in the cabin. Well, I know he did, because I lived down in that area too. But he lived in the cabin across the road. But his folks stayed there in the summertime. And he stayed at the beach, and then in the wintertime, he'd move over there to that cabin. It was a house, but I think it's kind of started out as a cabin, but they had made it into a home.
I had no knowledge. I was in the Navy at that time, so I don't know.
In later years, I think Louis was interested in trying to do some subdividing and whatnot, and whether he didn't have the skills, or there was a period of time in here where the real estate, residential real estate to the Midwest didn't happen. People just weren't buying, and the economy was pretty stagnant for a number of years here, so that might have been a piece of it.
Well, and he worked here in town in the wintertime for Cecil Carr
As an accountant.
as an accountant. And I know he was doing that when I first met him.
Well, one of them, and I don't know which one it was, when we were out there, he was going to college in UCLA out in California.
Well, Louis went to college in California,
But I don't know which.
I don't know that it was, I don't remember, I don't think it was
But
UCLA.
then I heard through the grapevine that he would rather party than go to school, so the old man grabbed him by the nape of the neck and pulled him back, said, hey.
That could have been. I don't know. But I do know he went to college in California, but I don't think it was UCLA. I was thinking it was a smaller college, but I'm not sure.
Do you remember any of the other people who worked out there, either in the bathhouse or the concession stand, or while you were there? I know the girls, I worked in selling hot dogs.
I really, I draw a blank when and I probably did know everybody
Sure,
there, but I
yeah.
just, now I can't put a name and a face together, But,
My wife worked in the check stand,
Did she?
Yeah.
Okay.
and I believe Sharon
I think Sharon did for a while. too.
for a while, and there was another family that was had the Ford agency here, the Idings. Both of their kids worked out there for a number of years.
Helen,
I could have said
Margaret?
Yes. and Barney,
And-
who was in the same class that you were in. Barney worked out there a little bit too. But it was a place that you enjoyed, and it also, when we're looking back and say we probably made $25 a week out there, we were the fattest kids in high school that year. There was just no doubt about it. Because you could buy a decent sized pizza for $1.25 and get this up there. So, $25 a week we had more money than we should have.
yeah, we got to know some of the guys from Offutt, the Air Force guys that come down and swim and whatever.
Wasn't there a time that it was off limits to Offutt?
Not that I remember.
I was
not
thinking
that
there was a
Not that I
time.
remember.
I had heard that too, and I don't remember time period.
No, I don't know either, and it could have been, like later.
Did you two ever have to save anybody out there?
Well, yeah, we did. Mostly, it was smaller kids. They tiptoe out, pretty soon they're, up to their neck and whatever, and then they're floundering around, and you have to go out and grab them, But one guy did drown. He, kind of a sad situation, but he lived in Lincoln, and he told his wife he was going down to the local bar and have a couple beers and get some cigarettes or something. And he picked up this cow, and of all things, they drove all the way from Lincoln down to Merritt's, and of course had beer or whatever. And he said to her, I'm going to go for a swim or watch this or whatever, and he went and dove in, and he never came up. Well, she didn't know whether he was playing a game or, whatever, and she sitting there, and after a while, dawned on her, hey, this guy, he ain't around, so she come running over to us, and she said, hey, this guy dove in over there a while back, and he ain't come up. Well, so we got, I don't know how many guys, if I can remember right, probably 4 or 5, and we, about where she said he went in, we dove down, we found him, and got the story, that he had, and of course, called his wife, and she didn't believe it. Can't be, he's down here at the bar, your husband's dead, he's down here at Merritt Beach, but that was the only one we ever had. And that was kind of like I say, kind of a fluke deal that, if you watched everybody dive in, from all over, you'd go nuts, And like I say, she didn't know whether he was putting on an act or being silly or whatever, so, but he drowned.
we had one other major event that summer, and that was, it wasn't a drowning, but it was an accident. And there was some kids out drinking and partying and whatnot, and they had been expelled. Emory had told them that they had to leave the beach because they weren't behaving real well. And at the very east end of the lake, there was a smaller, shallow area that had a little ramp in it for a baby pool. And as this kid's last hurrah, he ran down and dove off of that end of the baby pool and broke his neck. And when that happened, it was obvious what had happened. That, you know, you could see that he was. So we never took him out of the water. We brought him in close to the shore, and then weighted him down until the rescue squad could come out and get him, and he was transported and then later sued the beach for negligence and won. So I think in future years, one of the questions items that hit the Merritts in the operation of the thing was a liability issue. And for some reason or another, the court sided with this guy when it was obvious that he was under an influence and was in the process of being expelled, but they still deemed that it was negligence on the part of the beach. But he was alive when he left. And the guy that Toots alluded to was temporarily resuscitated and then went back into it. But part of his problem was the fact that he had an epileptic seizure.
Oh, I didn't know that.
That they did a
We didn't have,
postmortem
well,
on him, and that came to light.
if you caught somebody repeatedly, you know, like throwing sand, you know, or things like that, we tell, hey, don't throw sand and whatever. And once in a while, we'd ask somebody, you know, you're gonna have to leave, you know. I mean, that was very rare, but then there was a couple guys that that's what they come down there for, was to cause trouble. So just about every time they come, we knew we were gonna have to ask them to leave, you know. So, but that was, like I say, that was kind of a rare deal, you know what I mean? Most of the people came down there to have fun, you know, but...
Was the big swing there?
Yes.
You guys were there?
Yeah.
So I always thought
That was a challenge because
Yes.
at the opening of the beach, two guys would have to shinny up those poles and wrap the swing on, and then when you were out there, then you'd go ahead and take the plunge off. And you know, the first year or so that you did it, you took the easy way down, which was to jump and cannonball. But then when you really got your real hair on your chest, and you went ahead and dove off of it. It had pretty good height out there. I'm not so sure I'd want to do that today, but.
Did you bring some things that you wanted?
I brought just a few pictures that I had with me the last time that I was here, if you were interested in looking at them. But
I wonder if I could get a close-up on them somehow. If you want to hold something up, let me see if I can.
they're such small items that I don't know that, and they're kind of, several of them here are just, they're so blurry, but when you look at the two of us today, and take a look at us today and how we're shaped and what have you, and what we look like,
Would you tip that up and hold?
and to give you the perspective of just how young we really were. That's Toots on the blanket, and
Okay, I'm going to zero in on that. Oh, I got a good shot of it. It's a little...
young and thin and had
I'm
all
not
of
real
our
steady
hair.
here.
We were young and thin and had all of our hair.
Yep, I got him.
Got him?
Got him.
Okay. Now I'll look.
But faces in there that you might recognize. Go ahead and flip through with you.
I recognize this kind of type of album.
Yes,
As
isn't that cute?
having had some of those, probably still do someplace.
I think that this is kind of an interesting photograph. It's not very sharp and what have you, but the old guy with the bucket
Okay, tip it up toward me.
is Mr. Merritt Senior.
Oh,
And, you know, I think it kind of typifies the type of work ethic that you see in many small business people
Yeah.
and whatnot. Here's a guy that could afford to pay somebody to pick up stuff, but to walk around with a 5-gallon bucket picking up stuff.
And I think he was still doing that in the 60s and 70s when I was.
When
Yeah.
you know, you can afford, you don't have, there was absolutely no financial need for him to be walking around with a 5-gallon bucket picking up pop bottles or cigarette butts or whatnot. But you know, there's a story in there someplace. I'm not sure I've identified it, but
well, I got a good picture of those.
Good, good.
It was just a fun summer.
And you did it just the one summer?
I did it just the one summer, yeah. I'll say that I was a lifeguard one summer. Now, up till then, I was out there every day, you know. I wasn't a lifeguard, but I was just out there fooling around swimming.
Did you have lifeguard training then? Where did you take
Yeah,
that?
well, the Red Cross, you know, had...
Out there?
Well, yeah, that's where they did it at.
Okay.
You know, they'd take you out in the bus in the morning and everybody would, you know, learn how to float, all that type of stuff, you know.
yeah, there were a number of designations that the Red Cross would give you, and one of them was just being a swimmer, and then the next one was life-saving.
Yes.
And then you
I
got,
think the main thing
and then you
I
got
got
an
out
advanced level
of,
of
even
that.
today, you know, you see these guys go out to save somebody, and if you panic along with him, you're dead. You're dead. You know,
Lost 2 people, it's been a while.
and another thing, you know, they always said that if he grab a hold of you, just go down, he'll let go. I mean, he wants to stay up, see. Well, then you come up behind him,
Yeah.
and you grab him around the neck, you know, and
I've had lifeguard training
you know,
at the Jewish Community
and,
Center.
but the
in
main
Omaha.
thing you want to do is don't lose your cool, because you're both going to be in trouble if you do. He's going to fight you just as you fight him. So just go down, come up behind him, you know, and talk to him. Say, hey, just take it easy now. I'll get you in, you know, whatever. But and thankfully we didn't have to do that. I mean, like I say, the little kids, you know, why you could just grab them and you know, they're out there trying to flail around, you know, but
When you look at the
it was,
at the mechanics of a sand pit, they all have a dredge line. You'll have a fairly shallow area, and then when you come out to that dredge line, they drop off quickly. And we called those a drop-off layer, and we tried to mark them. We put little buoys out right at the drop-off level, and then we put up some ropes in later times that had a little rope with flotation devices and a weight on them to try to keep people away from that. But many times, if it got a little crowded, people would crowd and get out close to that dredge line, and they would get out, and you'd have to go out and give them a little assistance.
Yeah.
And it wasn't uncommon on a busy summer to have to go out maybe 3 or 4 times.
And for even people who knew how to swim and thought they were walking along and then
Yeah.
down,
Yeah.
And
it's
they
a little
would panic
panic period.
or the other, there was, it happened almost daily, I guess. People had just learned how to swim. You know, and they're out there doing this, and they want to go out to the raft. And you're watching them, you're going, I hope you make it, you know. And finally they made the, you know, had a step, iron step there that could get up on the platform. And then, of course, you're saying, well, I'm going to have to watch him because he's going to have to come back, you know. But that was kind of fun, you know. You can see that they were really struggling, but they were swimming. But they were trying to get out to that raft, you know. And that was kind of fun to see people, and I would say people, mostly young kids. But I mean, and I guess that's the way you learn how to swim, you know. You don't get it, you lose the fear of the water, then you're okay.
Don't get wet.
But a lot of people learn how to swim on Merritt's. A lot of people learn how to swim out there.
For sure.
And like I say, it was a fun place to go.
There was no pool here in town.
Weekends, families would take and bring a lunch out and, have lunch with the kids or whatever, and it was just an all right place to bring your family and have fun. I mean, there was no sex, no drunken beer parties, no rowdy dowdies out there, bullies or anything like that, It was just a fun place to, try and get a suntan and maybe have a hot dog or a bottle of pop or something, and it was fun. It was fun.
But that wasn't just for my generation, I have had an older brother at the time, and the beach was a prominent part in his social development and whatnot. So even people a little bit older than us, that was a major cornerstone in growing up around here. And I have to admit this, I'll be going to Omaha and I'll glance over at the beach over there and I see this duck blind sitting right exactly where the guard stand was. And it's just stake in the heart.
Oh, I think every time I drive up, I kind of look that way too, and I just think it's a shame that it's fallen into such disrepair and, looks so shabby, because it did always look nice.
Well,
it was kind of a landmark. Not only the kids from Plaquemine, but the kids from Bellevue and South Omaha and places like that, it was kind of a drawing magnet to meet up there and have a good time and things of that nature, So it was a landmark that everybody could go down to Merritt's and have a good time. It wasn't us go down there and see if we can raise all kind of cane, because that wasn't tolerated down there. But and like I say, very seldom do we have to ask anybody to leave, But it was just a fun time, and
I mentioned something earlier that as a little kid, 6th grade, maybe even back as far as the 5th grade, where kids would roll up their swimming suits in a towel and thumb ride up to the beach. And it's hard to imagine where we are today, how careful and paranoid with good cause that we have come to, and what a shame it is to have gone from, I'm going out to the beach today, and you thumb a ride up and you didn't worry about who was picking up your kid. We didn't have any predators, or maybe we did, but they didn't come to the surface. But you weren't afraid to let fairly young kids have that much freedom and that much ability to roam and to get around in a community
and discover
and where
explore.
We are today. And it developed a lot of skills.
Absolutely.
The ability to get out and meet other people, to get along with other people, to be trustworthy, and
we just a lot of times just sat around and shoot the bull.
Yeah.
It'd be maybe 5 or 6 guys, or even gals. We'd come down and sit in, and they'd talk about their school, we'd talk about our school, and that was fun to learn, about other kids and what went on in their school and things of that nature, Like I say, it was just a fun place for the young kids to go, and I don't know whether you want to call it let off steam or not, because you didn't really let off any steam, you just had fun. Just swimming and laying around and shooting the bull with other people and whatever. And I mean, that was a fun time.
Well, not only the beach, and there were other institutions that you availed yourself of in the community. I moved away from here, a long way from here, And when it comes time to retire, and you're thinking, okay, where do I want to go? You know, and there were some lovely places that were available to us where there's oceans and mountains, and which are now on fire. But you know, where did I end up when everything was all said and done? Came back here.
Back here.
Want to go home?
So.
Yeah. Thank you, guys. I think we got a lot of interesting things
Yes, I
today.
think we did.
Well, I don't have anything to add to it. I think that back in their day, now you gotta remember that this was 1953. It's not as it is today.
Right.
No.
And everything was kind of a simple, low-key type environment, you know. So everything wasn't quite as important nowadays as it, you know, there was no marijuana or drugs or anything like that. So
There was, we didn't know what the hell it was.
we never knew it.
We didn't know about it.
I went to my first
You know,
drug
I'll be
intervention
right
class and
honest
I'm
with
looking
you
at this stuff and I think, you know, I cut down a damn fortune.
It was very uncommon to see somebody go to Wimpy's and order a cup of coffee.
Yeah.
I mean, you look down like, wait a minute, you know, it was usually a Coke and a hamburger, see, or something like that. But I mean, somebody would order a cup of coffee, you go, whoa, wait a minute. You know? So, I mean, it was kind of a value that the school had, the kids had. You knew just about everybody in school. You could probably call them all by their first name. And they knew you, you knew them. The Friday night was game night, whether it was football, basketball, or whatever. And Sunday afternoon, they had a baseball team with the American Legion, and we played baseball on Sundays against other towns. And it was just a fun place to be. It really was.
It was a good life. Thank you guys very
Yeah.
much.